Good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Buelow. I'm the Tribal Relations Team Lead for USDA Rural Development. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited. I want to give thanks to NTTA and Godfrey and Sonia specifically for giving us so much time on the stage today. Our administrator is going to be speaking to you tomorrow morning. Andy Burke's coming, and we're doing a workshop later this afternoon on our telecom program. So thanks all of you for being here. I was kind of adding up all of the auspicious things that were happening, trying to give myself a little courage and confidence as I got in front of you today. But the eclipse yesterday was pretty cool. Anybody get a chance to see it? Any full totality people before you traveled out here? Nice. How'd it look? It was a pretty cool event. So I guess it's 20 more years now until the next one comes across North America. So we got that going for us. The men's national championship was here in Phoenix last night, so that was pretty cool. Today's also the last day of the holy month for everyone in the Islam community, so it's Eid al-Fitr for anyone who's Muslim. If you have friends or relatives that are Muslim, it's the last day of their holiest month, so that's pretty auspicious. And then Brian Smith invited me to come out here. I don't know if Brian made it in the room yet, but there he is. You all know him from his work with NTTA and the Title II borrowers going back years now. So I just wanted to thank him for encouraging me to come because it is wonderful to be here in front of you today. A little bit about our team. So at Rural Development now we have a tribal relations team. I've been doing this job for about 18 years. It's been a wonderful opportunity, but for a long time it was just me. And we serve all of our agencies. So it's not just Rural Utility Service. We also work with our Rural Housing Service and our Rural Business and Cooperative Service. So it's a lot. And we work with all 574 tribes around the country and all of our staff. We've got about 4,500 staff nationwide. So now there's 4 of us. There's myself and three tribal relations specialists, 2 of which are tribal citizens. I should say that I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm not native, so when I also thought it was a little bit auspicious when the folks from Leech Lake were talking about what they were doing in their community. I had a good fortune of being on their lake last summer, actually on a fishing trip, so felt good about that as well. But I've been doing this job for 18 years, and like I said, it's been me for most of that time. But now we have some stars aligning at USDA. So anybody know Heather Dawn Thompson from Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe? Are there some folks here from Cheyenne River? There's Mona. Heather Dawn is our Director of Tribal Relations at the department level. And she's really set the tone on our work with tribes. If you don't know her, she spent a career working in economic development and on telecom and infrastructure issues. So having her at the helm at USDA, reporting directly to the secretary, has really supercharged things over the last 3 years. And I'm really grateful to her and her leadership. Our team at Rural Development doesn't directly report to Heather Dawn, but we work with her and her team on a daily basis and coordinate all of our efforts across USDA working with tribes. So super, super thankful for her and her work. Our purpose on our team is twofold. First, we work with tribes on a daily basis. We're willing to talk about our programs. We're willing to talk about our programs, how they've worked. We're willing to talk about how our programs haven't worked. And we're willing to dig in when challenges arise. And lo and behold, sometimes when we work with USDA, some challenges arise. So our staff is there to help build bridges to not only our programs for you, but also to maybe some of the answers and help you to get DS. And if we can't get DS, we'll also explain why that's the case and take that on under advisement as we move forward. The second thing we do is we support our staff. So like I mentioned, we got 4,500 folks spread out around the country delivering our programs. So we also provide training and policy advice to our staff in our work with tribes. So you probably work most closely with Brian and our general field representatives. They're like our specialists in our telecommunications program. So Brian probably talks to me more than he'd like these days because there are lots of challenges. So we're working with our branch chiefs, we're working with our field staff to try to make things, and this might be hard for you to believe, but as smooth as possible as you navigate both applications, and for those of you that have gotten grants or loans from us in the past, staying in compliance with those requirements as well. So that's really our twofold purpose. One, doing outreach, working with tribes. The other, working internally across USDA Rural Development and our staff. So I wanted to quickly sort of not pat anyone on the back, but recognize how far we've come. Like I said, I've been in this job for 18 years. I've been working for USDA for almost 25 years now. And things have changed a lot in those 25 years. So I wanted to do a little bit of a pulse check with the audience here. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. So if your shoulders are tight or if you're left-handed, get ready. But how many of you, let's start within the last 5 years, have gotten an award, either a loan or a grant from the federal government for a tribal broadband system? Any tribal program, Commerce, Treasury, FCC, USDA. All right, now the hard question for the old people like me in the room. How many of you got an award from USDA or any federal agency? Let's go back to 2010. Before 2010, who had a loan or grant from the federal government? It's really down to some of the OGs, the telecoms, the Hopi telecoms, the Cheyenne River telecoms. And things have really changed, and that's made the environment very complex. And I also want to just take a moment to recognize the work that you've all done to advocate for more funding. It's Congress that eventually created those programs, but there's been an explosion of resources for tribes and rural communities in general to build out more robust broadband infrastructure. And a lot of that's happened within the last 5 years, since 2019, since the pandemic. And that's a huge opportunity, and it's also pretty complex and has raised some challenges for you, trying to figure out which program is going to fit best for which part of your project. And it's created some challenges for us as we've tried to rapidly change and create more opportunities with tribes, especially for tribal ownership. So there's just 3 things I wanted to mention that we're continue to dig in on a daily basis. And frankly, we need your help where we're balancing those opportunities and the challenges. The first I mentioned is the abundance of programs and the successive funding announcements that you've seen. We're on Reconnect Round 5. Hopefully everybody in the room is aware. If you weren't, there's a funding opportunity open currently from Rural Utilities Service through the Reconnect program. Also, the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program at NTIA. FCC has some programs, NTIA has some non-tribal programs, so the menu has gotten quite big over the last few years. And that's a huge opportunity, but it also is a challenge on sequencing, and we realize that. For us, there's been some operational challenges, especially when it comes to how we define tribal lands in places like Alaska and Oklahoma specifically, but in general. And some things we've done in our Reconnect program and across our telecom programs, which are progress, no doubt, but have ratcheted up the complexity, are a couple things. The first is we've got a set-aside in Reconnect. It used to be where we had no set-asides for tribes in our telecom programs. It used to be we really only had one grant program, Community Connect grant program. But in the last few rounds of Reconnect, we've had funds set aside specifically for tribal projects. This round, it's $150 million with no matching requirement. It's a pretty big deal, for us at least, and we hope that folks take advantage of that opportunity. But where can that money be used? We're trying to drive that money to infrastructure on tribal lands specifically. So how do we define tribal lands? In places like Alaska and Oklahoma, that's a little more challenging than even here in Arizona, like the Gila River Reservation, which at least has clear boundaries where the reservation is and where the tribal trust land stops and ends. So we're working on that when it comes to where the set-aside funding can be used. We also have set up a system where tribes and tribal leaders can self-certify whether or not broadband exists, once again on their tribal lands. So where tribes have jurisdiction over their lands, if there's even an award or a previous award or someone says they're providing service and the tribal leader certifies that knowing that's not the case, these households, this neighborhood, whatever the case might be, does not have service, we'll take the tribal leader's input. We need to go out and verify that. But once again, where does that take place? Where do tribal lands start? Where do tribal lands end? And the third sort of layer to that particular onion is tribal consent. So we're in the business of supporting partnership if you want to work with a non-tribal entity to provide broadband service. But we'll only allow those folks to build out their systems and actually be eligible for award if they have the consent of said tribe through a tribal resolution of support. But once again, where does that where is that tribal resolution necessary? Where do the tribal lands start and end? In the lower 48, it's pretty clear. But once again, in Alaska and Oklahoma, things can get a little fuzzy. So we're constantly trying to learn from you in real examples where you're looking at building out your funded service territories. And we're trying to figure out what maps work best. So those things get very complex. It's not that they're without conflict. Some people have different opinions on those issues. And it's our job to help you navigate where our programs are eligible, where you're eligible for the set-aside, and where those tribal consents and self-certification are valid. So our team's here to work with our GFR folks and our telecom staff to help you navigate that as those issues come up. Last two things, I want to plug our telecom staff. So this afternoon, if you have questions, if you want to learn more about the programs, if you want to push us on any of these issues that I just mentioned, we're doing a 2-hour workshop as a breakout session on Reconnect Round 5 and the other telecom programs. Brian, Ken, and Doug from our team will be leading that session. I'll be in the room as well, but we invite you to that. That's from 1 to 3 in the Buelow room. And then I also wanted to thank Godfrey and Sonia, because as I mentioned, Administrator Burke's going to be here in the morning. He runs all of Rural Utility Service, our electric, water, and telecom programs. He's a political appointee, so I hope you get a chance to see him tomorrow morning at the plenary. He'll be on from, I think, 9 to 9:30 on the agenda. And at the end of the day, I remain optimistic, even with all the complexities, even with the challenges that come with federal programs and rural utilities programs specifically. This is a monumental time. We've got more funding available than we ever had. You all have built out more infrastructure. The communities around you have built out more infrastructure. So it's been really exciting to watch from my vantage point. So Godfrey, thanks again. When you're traveling home, please travel safe, and I wish you the best in the rest of the conference. Thanks, Godfrey.